So this week's podcast, we welcome Lara. Hello, Lara. Ooh.
Hi, Paul.
That was it. That was enthusiasm. I'm trying to, up the UK enthusiasm level, which is generally fairly low, but that's it now. It's all spent. So welcome.
I have a lot of family in the UK, so I get that.
You get it, yeah.
Yeah.
We don't really understand enthusiasm. It's not in our DNA, We're enthusiastic people went to America. Anyway, Lara, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're based, and why we're talking, and give us a bit of a backstory.
Yeah, sure. Well, there's a lot to say. I'm in Vancouver, in Canada.
Nice.
And yeah, born and raised here. And my work is helping people with emotional regulation.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been, a yoga teacher, mindfulness breathwork teacher for 25 years. That's sort of been my thing that I've loved to do the longest. I love everything that I do, but I started to build on that. So I started to learn about, the energy body, studied some Chinese medicine. I'm an EFT tapping practitioner. I'm an emotion code practitioner, which is releasing trapped emotions from the body. Just going back to EFT, that's based in Chinese medicine as well. I'm a yin yoga teacher, which is based in Chinese medicine. And then I've studied bioenergy.
My goodness, is there anything you haven't studied? Goodness me.
It's really been, and and then I've studied energy medicine with Donna Eden, who's like the pioneer in energy medicine. She's amazing. So yeah, it's, understanding what's going on in the body has always been a huge fascination to me.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you, let's have it. Yeah, I'm just curious. What made you get into that? The yoga stuff and all the rest of it, which I know I've just reduced it to one word. But what started all that interest?
Well, I can tell you, yeah, life wasn't amazing up until I got into yoga. I'll say that. I remember exactly what happened and why I got into yoga. So here's the thing is I've always loved to travel, done tons of long haul flights, and you'll hear about that. Been tons and tons of, went to India, Thailand, like a lot of long places, lived in Israel for a year and a half. Like I've been all over the place. And I was about to leave on a trip to India, and I always wanted to go to India because I just felt compelled to go there. I really didn't know much. I mean, trust me, I got there and I spent 6 months and I was there till the end of my visa. I'm like, get me out of here. But then a year later, I went back because I ended up studying yoga there. And I went back and that sort of changed things for me. But on that initial trip when I was going to go and I had my visa, I literally, would get a letter in the mail all the times, about a yoga studio I went to, and I had just started practicing there. And it said, it talked about being a teacher and doing teacher training. And I remember thinking, like, that's just so intimidating. There's no way I could be in front of all these people teaching, this asana practice. And I remember opening it, and I opened it every month when it came for like 2 years. And I'm about to go to India. I hadn't booked the ticket yet, though. But I had paid for the visa and all that and was just about to buy the ticket and even rented out my room where I was living to get a roommate. And I opened the letter and I said, I'm doing this. So the money that was going to the trip, to the ticket for India, went to the teacher training. Turns out it was the exact amount of money that I needed. And back then, it was a 9-month training. And I knew that I was going to be a yoga teacher. And it was like I felt like it was a mini divine intervention because something was like, I'm like, I can't say no to this. I have to.
Yeah.
It was the weirdest thing. So I taught yoga for 5 years and then I did question it. And I thought, well, now I'm going to go to India and see. I'm going to go to where yoga came from. And I went for 6 months, and 2 months in, I found a yoga teacher that I loved. And I spent 4 months with him and chanting, backbending. He was a backbending expert. So I practiced 2.5-hour practice every morning, backbending for an hour in the evening, and then chanting for half an hour in the evening, 6 days a week for 4 months. So I came back completely different person. And life was pretty, crappy before that. Like I, had some depression and had lost, my dad and a best friend, in the space of a day. And so I was really struggling after that. And I didn't really know what I want and I really felt lost, but I got to India, found the teacher. And I think honestly, one of the biggest things that I'll say right now, I've got all my favorite books sitting here.
No.
I heard the first 5 people I met in India on the first couple days all said the power of now, Eckhart Tolle, and they went on and on. And I was literally, because I was so angry, and I had, I just wasn't super happy. And I was like, fine, I'll buy the book. Why is everyone's telling me this? And I remember going into a little store in the little town that I was in India. It was in the north, in Rishikesh. It was the first town I went to. And I found the book, and I remember opening it, and I can't remember what the line was, but I read like one sentence and it just hit me. And I thought, okay, well, if 50 rupees or whatever it was, I'll buy the book, right? And I spent the rest of the trip reading it. He suggests you read symbol to symbol, and I read the whole entire thing. Meanwhile, got into the yoga practice very deeply, stopped drinking, like, not that I was drinking heavily, but I tell you, when you're practicing that much yoga and chanting and backbending, you're tired, you're moving a lot of energy in your body. And I was just growing and changing,
Yeah.
like I wouldn't have known it now, but I would say now, looking back, my awareness was just shifting, and all these old mental structures and things that you learned about in the power of now were just falling away. And I was like, oh, there's so much more to like life than I had any idea. And as soon as I finished reading it the first time, I closed it and I opened it again, and I read it again immediately. So that book and then that combination of being there was really what got me on that path. And I came back and, was loved teaching yoga, taught for another year and a half. And then I went back to India for another 4 months because I wanted to do the teacher training by that teacher I had been studying with.
Right.
So I went back and I just wanted to be certified by him. So yeah. And then I mean, there's stories for the rest of them, but that's how I got into it. I guess I just felt drawn to do the other things.
So the traveling before all of that, was that just like for a jolly? That was just traveling for traveling. Or was it work related?
No, it was all, I actually wrote down last week. I wrote down, started writing down all the travels because I've got all these passports. I have like 9 passports, and I was collecting them and looking through dates and that kind of thing. And, when I was younger, my dad lived in the UK, my whole life, pretty much. I guess when I was 3 months old, he went, my mom was English, but she came back to Canada with my dad, and my dad was Canadian. And then he went back to the UK and lived in Hampstead. That's where he was. So we would spend our summers growing up there. My grandma lived there. My cousins were all there. So,
Okay.
back in those days, as kids, they just put us on the plane. I mean, I was like 4 or 5,
Yeah.
going on a plane with my sisters who were like 5 years older than me, and stewardess looks after you, and that's, I don't even remember, but dad would be there and he'd pick us up on the other end. We'd spend the summer there, and, we'd go back. So yeah, there was a lot of travel. There's a lot of travel in those younger years, and it was mostly to the UK.
Okay. So why are we talking then? So what's the link with Lovefly, fear of flying, and all that sort of stuff?
It's a really good question.
Thank you.
Well, really good question. I pivoted recently to helping people with flight anxiety, and I've helped people, as I said, with emotional regulation for a long time, but I felt like I was helping everybody. And it just really, really spoke to me. It kept coming in. And if I'm really honest, there's another business that I'm working on right now that is related with wellness and flying, and I can't share that with you right now.
Okay.
But that was part of it. And I'd love to at some point, because things are really building and it's really exciting. It's just that I feel like when you talk about things, some things, especially when they're new and they're building, it dilutes the experience. And just I speak a lot in energetics. Just the energetic feeling of the momentum of it building and growing right now is really awesome. So I'm just keeping that close to my heart. But so I decided to just look around. I just got that feeling to look on Facebook and look around for different groups, and I saw Lovefly. And I just liked the feel of it. There's a bunch on there, and I thought, well, if I can go and share techniques and tips that I've learned and that I've used for myself and that I teach other people. And, then I thought, I just want to be of service in one area. And I really wanted to niche in one specific area, because I've had people, I've worked with a lot of people with childhood trauma, and that's, I've had a lot of childhood trauma. I'm not surprised. So, like, and, people come in, oh, I've got sciatica and I've got, like, I don't know, like my relationship or like with, the work that I do, like emotion code, you can release trapped emotions for anything. They're like, well, I moved or my dad passed away. Okay, you've got some grief. Let's release trapped emotions around that. There's just, so you could really, angle it anywhere, point it anywhere. And I just decided I wanted to niche in one area. I feel like there's a need for it. And it's something that I've experienced. And when I went through a coaching session or a coaching program a year ago, they were talking about like, where do you have a lot of experience? What do you love? And putting those things together with your niche. And it took me about a year to come to it. And I was like, I've always loved to travel, love being on the plane, except for when I haven't because of what's happened at different times. And then at the same time, I've learned all of these tools and techniques that work. And, you know, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but when I looked on Lovefly and read some of the stories and heard of I have worked with a few women now, which has been great. And, hearing the stories, taking that intake form, and it's like, well, it's the turbulence, it's when the plane shakes, it's, even being up in the air and looking down, like that's never been my problem. But I was like, oh, wow, I never even thought about that before. So, I've been learning a lot in the process as well, but reading stories about people, I'm now on the way to the airport and I'm freaking out and I don't know what to do. And, as I'm reading this and I'm like, oh my God, I've got so much information to share with these people. This can be really, really helpful if they're if they're interested in it. Not everybody believes in the energy body, but this is Chinese medicine, isn't it? And it's it's very well known. It's proven, like they've done all the studies on tapping, like it's for phobias and everything, and it does work. If you commit to it, and everything has a cumulative effect. And that's what I always say to my clients. Everything has a cumulative effect. So it's not the day of, the day before. 10 days before you're flying, let's do all of these techniques. Let's calm your vagus nerve. Let's calm the fight or flight response. You can do that with your own hands. You can do them on the plane as well. There are tools and techniques, but I guess we have to trust ourselves and go, I listened to Ben's podcast yesterday and that was great, and we are more than that, like we are more than that emotion. But I always say emotions are, they're there to be expressed and they're from past experience that are sitting in our body and they just want to be released. And we can do that. And we have tools that allow us to now. But I think a lot of people get stuck and they don't want to look at that, am I holding my past experience, in my body? But, I can tell you some stories that came up for me with tapping, with clearing, in-flight claustrophobia. And it's like, I don't know, proof's in the pudding.
Yeah. So, but tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind. Like, what has troubled you in terms of flying, if anything, because you have traveled a lot. And then maybe we can get into that a little bit, and just so people understand where you're coming from, and the fact that you kind of get it.
Absolutely. So yeah, prior to so I've talked about all the childhood travel, and I guess it was in 2003 because I remember it was after my dad had passed away, and so I'm in Vancouver and I flew, and no problem flying up until that point, no memory at all of anything. Just I love being on the plane. Get my journal out. I'm gonna like plan my whole life for the next 9 hours while I'm in the plane.
Yeah.
Like I'm a writer and I love that. I love it, love it, love it. And I remember traveling with a boyfriend to Cuba and we landed. And so it's about, I think, a 5-hour flight from Vancouver. And we landed on the tarmac and, first of all, it's hot. But I remember we were at the back of the plane and they said, we're going to sit on the tarmac, the gate's not clear. We're going to sit here for a minute or whatever. And I remember I was reading a book and I looked up and I saw all the, everyone stands up as soon as the plane lands, and everybody stands up. And I'm like, if I wanted to get off of here right now, I wouldn't be able to. And I just like the energy just came up and I'm like, oh shit. And I was like, it was just so instantaneous, and I look and I thought, okay, look down at your book. And I looked down at my book and I'm like, just focus on the words. It was a romance novel. I liked it. I'm like, just focus on it. I literally had to, talk myself off the ledge and talk myself out of it against the voice in my head. And it was really scary. And I don't remember having any issue going back. I actually highlighted the times that it happened. So, I flew to Thailand in 2003. I was in India for 6 months, 2004, went back in 2005. I was in Thailand again, 2005. And then San Diego, I highlighted it here because I did actually go to, I had an issue on a flight. I don't quite remember it, but what I do remember is I was getting on a flight back home, and this couple hours, Vancouver to San Diego, no big deal. But I remember thinking about it a lot and feeling panicky. So, and somebody had mentioned this EFT tapping, and I remember finding somebody, and I did maybe 1 or 2 sessions. Oh, I know what had happened. I had been the lock had got jammed on the toilet in on a flight. Not for very long, but long enough that the voice in the head came in, and I'm like, oh no, if I want to get out of here, what if I'm on here? Like, how long's this flight going to be? Or how long do we have left? And so that's what it was. And I was afraid of that and that happening again. So I saw this guy in San Diego, and we did some tapping. And I remember he had me imagine being in the bathroom with it locked after we did the tapping. And he goes, how do you feel? And I said, it feels like the door's not even there, and I can walk right through it down the aisle and right back to my seat. And I felt free. But the truth of the matter is it did come up again in the future. And so what I always say, there's not necessarily one isolated, incident. And I have 4 specific incidences. One of them was that toilet being jammed, the lock. But I have several other, like 3 other, experiences that I could share that I think are contributing factors.
Sure.
If you want me to.
Go for it.
Yeah. All right. So anyway,
let's share the fear.
all right. So yeah, after the San Diego one, so I flew after that. Like, I've written down here, like I was in Mexico, Peru, Colombia, New York. Then I met my husband. He just reminded me the other night. He was like, we bought a little house there in Tulum that we rented out, and we would go there a couple times a year. He says we flew there 19 times in the space of 5.5 years. And that was starting in 2015 and until 2018. So I had the flight claustrophobia hit me in 2003 on a flight, and then 2009 with tons of travel in between, and then not again until 2018.
Random, isn't it?
It's very random. And we're talking Portugal, which I'm going to in October, by the way. That'll be the next one. Peru, Colombia, like a lot of flights in there. And so, yeah, it's very, very interesting. And so what was I going to say about that? So yeah, so going into it. So yeah, lots of flying in between. And so when my dad passed away and he lived in the UK, we had gone, my sisters and I, very quickly on a flight to the UK. And we were there, and we were in his flat, and he had built this, it was a regular bathroom, and then he had built this tiny little bathroom that just had like a little roof, like not a roof, obviously it had a roof. It's because there was a flat above, and there was stairs that went over it. So it was just basically like teeny sink, extra bathroom if you have to go to the bathroom. And it was super small, and I went in there, and my sister locked me in there. And I'm like bashing it, and I'm like, let me out. And she wouldn't let me out. And I'm like, I'm claustrophobic, let me out. And I remember that was the first sort of bigger time where I'm like, oh, I've just said that out loud. I'm claustrophobic,
Yeah.
And I remember flying home after that. In fact, I had to go back to the UK with my other sister because she was dealing with legal stuff, and we went together, and, so, it didn't come up again until, so that was the second incident. And then, and there is one underlying thing that's been here the whole time, which I'm going to mention last. The next one was 2018, where, of all things, I felt wonderful, great. I'm hosting my first yoga retreat, and I'm the teacher, and I got to be there. And I went aboard, and, I was, at the gate, and we go to walk in that little tube, and everyone's lined up, and suddenly the energy just came up, and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, I don't think I can get on this plane. And in my mind, I'm like, the rational part, I'm like, are you kidding right now? You've always loved flying. You're like the first one on, like, let me settle to get my chocolate out and all my stuff. I'm super excited. And I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And I had to do an energy medicine technique. Because I had to be there. It was my retreat. I rented out this beach resort. Like, all these people were coming. I was like, oh my goodness. And I shared it with everybody at the retreat too, which was very freeing, I have to say. But there's a great technique that calms your vagus nerve and your triple warmer, which are both responsible for fight or flight response. And it's doing this, you're tracing it next to your eye, just so people get an idea. Down your ear, hand is flat, and you pull off your ring finger. So I'm literally doing this, and in my seat, to stay in my seat. And those people next to me are looking at me, and I thought, I don't care. I have to be here right now. But what it was doing is it was calming my fight or flight response and the amygdala in my brain. And it was like, oh, okay, I can do this. And I ended up feeling fine. And I got there, because that was a 5.5 hour flight.
Sure.
And, I had to be on the plane. So, and then after that, I did a couple, I went back to Tulum. Actually, as soon as I did that yoga retreat, my husband and I sold our little house in Mexico, and we were going to go to New York for Christmas. And I had flight anxiety on those flights, or the claustrophobia. And what I did was I just booked a ticket or a seat near the front so that I had space and I felt near the door, and that made me feel more comfortable. So for me, it's always shown up as once the door closes. And yeah, and again, it was something that I loved, but it's taken a long time, like 50 years to figure out what was really, what a bigger part of it might have been. Which I'll share in a moment. So I did do, we got through the New York flight, and then I've done 2 more retreats since then, with a retreat partner this time. And we went to Mexico again, so 5 or 6 hour flights. One of them we had a brief layover. We were going to a further spot in Mexico, so we ended up having 2 flights, and I was totally fine. And what I did though beforehand was I was like, okay, just in case something comes up, I'm going to do all the tapping. Tapping on, what it is. Because when you do tapping, what happens is the amygdala in your brain calms down, and then you suddenly have a memory. And that's just what tends to happen, because the hippocampus in the brain next to the amygdala stores all of our memories.
Yes.
And so when we're at a state of panic and we tap, we have a memory. So we can have a memory anyway. And so I'll get to the bigger picture and the last piece of it now. So very recently, I'm always working on tapping, and, okay, what else, could there be there? And I, probably once or twice a week, I'll take time and do some deeper tapping. And so because I knew I was going to be on the podcast, I thought, well, I'm going to do some more tapping on this and see what else is there. Now, this is something that I knew had happened, and I really, honestly, though, I've blocked a lot of my childhood out, and there could have been other things that have come up. And I would never say that I wouldn't feel fearful of flying again. I think things can always come up, because I believe that we hold them in our body, but we can release them, and we can feel calm and relaxed and centered, and we can do that. And we have the power to do that. But very recently I was tapping, and I put myself in the plane, and I was like, and I just started tapping, and 2 rounds. This is, we're talking about 2 minutes here. And I'm tapping, and I'm like, I'm just talking out loud. We call it tapping and talking. And I'm like, well, I'm on the plane, is it all the people? Well, I don't love crowds, but no, it's not all the people. I mean, I used to love flying. And so I'm going around the 9 spots, right? I do 1 round, and I go, okay, well, what else is it? And I'm like, I said to myself, well, how do you really feel right now? Doors close. And I'm just about to start my 2nd round. And interestingly, I'm going up to the urinary bladder right here, which is fear. And I hit this spot, and I just say, I want to get out, and I want to get off now. And I'm like, and in that instant, I had a memory of being in Hampstead Heath one summer, and I was about 5 or 6 years old. And my dad took us, there was a fair, and we were on a Ferris wheel. And we all went on the Ferris wheel, my sisters and I. My dad was a big guy. I mean, he was very fit at that time. I'm just saying he was a big man, and he had long arms. And there's a reason I'm saying that, because you've got 3 little girls sitting next to you, which are my dad here and my sisters here. And the Ferris wheel starts going, and it starts going so fast, and our chairs are flipping upside down, and we're looking down, and we're seeing the ground. And I'm like, I remember, for a kid who doesn't, or a woman who doesn't remember a lot about her childhood, I'm like, I can remember having the worst terror, screaming at the top of my lungs, and stop it now, stop it now, stop it now. And the guy didn't stop it. So, and I'm sure, my dad, was not very emotionally mature. And I'm sure it would have been, do you want an ice cream? Or he'd say, darling, do you want to go to the pub for an orange juice? I remember that, right? And it was like, so my little body and my sisters as well, right? We're holding all this energy and our body remembers that experience. And it was the exact same thing as being on the plane. I want to get out and I want to get off.
Yeah.
Now, so that was a huge one that came up recently. So I was able to tap through that and, just the process. It's like, I had a lot of anger towards the man for not stopping it. I wasn't angry at my dad. I was like, am I angry at my dad? Didn't feel that way. So you really just have to go with your intuition and how you feel. And so, so I worked through that and that was great. And then the last piece was just backing up a little bit, but this was probably the biggest thing of all was that my mom, I had prenatal PTSD because she experienced a lot of abuse with my dad when she was pregnant with me. And so I actually talked to her yesterday because I just to hear the story more fully because I'd heard a lot of stories growing up and they weren't good stories. And I was like, so, I'd heard her talk about it and I'd heard my grandma talk about it, my mom's mom, but I didn't really know exactly all the things that had happened. And I wanted to hear the story again now.
Yes.
And, it's not a fun story, obviously, to talk about for my mom. And, for me, I mean, I had a tough relationship with my dad, but I've worked through a lot of that and he's been gone for a long time. I've done a lot of healing work around that. And so what I do know is that in the womb, and I've done some tapping on this for sure, but you're absorbing everything that's going on, right? And he was very violent, very loud. My mom said she was screaming a lot, and she was panicking a lot, right? So I would have absorbed all of that. And one great thing you can do with emotion code is you can release what we call prenatal trapped emotions. And so I remember the first emotion code session I ever had, because when I heard about Dr. Bradley Nelson talking about the emotion code, I heard him on a podcast. This is the book in case anyone's interested. He actually teaches you how to do it yourself. And he said, we hold these balls of emotion in the body. And I was finally someone saying it. And it's a doctor saying it because people don't believe it, right? Unless a doctor's saying it. And so that's when I became trained in the emotion code. And I knew I wanted to be a practitioner of it, but I wanted to just test out the efficacy of it first on myself. And so I did about 12 sessions with a lady just here in Vancouver. But my very first session was all prenatal trapped emotions. And they were all panic and anxiety and, unworthiness and shock. And, from what I remember, it was a long time ago now because I've been doing that for over 10 years. But even yesterday, I just released several prenatal trapped emotions after the call with my mom. I was like, oh, I haven't checked on that for a while. I'm just going to test myself and see. So I did that. And so I think a lot of it, there could be a lot of stuff for me to work through. And I always use tapping because for me, it's been the fastest technique. And I've just had so much, they've just done so many tests on it and studies. And I've had so many great results.
So I'm going to have to ask some questions about this because people might be listening going, I haven't heard of the emotion code thing. I've heard of EFT. I did some training in TFT years ago and just like a couple of days and nothing like what you've done, just because I wanted to understand it, a little bit about it. And so maybe if we could start with the tapping side of it, the emotional freedom therapy. I think I've got the right name for it. How does that work? So if somebody's listening to that thinking, oh, I've not heard of that, or I don't know how it works, what would you say to them?
Yeah. Well, what I would say to them is that we are storing our past experience in the body. And so if you're feeling, for example, in my case, if someone's feeling claustrophobic on a plane and they really want to get out, there's probably a reason why. And you're holding that experience in your body and we can get to the bottom of it. Lots of times people don't remember. But what's interesting is when you start tapping, like I said, people do remember. So I always, I think one of the first things that's important is that people believe that there's actually an energy body. And again, this has been proven in, Chinese medicine. They've done, over 310 studies last time I looked on the efficacy of EFT tapping, emotional freedom technique. And so what we do is we think about, how we're feeling. So we might start with when I think about being on a plane, I feel anxious. So we might just tap on that first. So you can tap on an emotion first. Uh, And then when your amygdala starts to relax, then you might have a memory. Well, what else has made me feel anxious in my life, right? You might have a memory, and it's very interesting. Is you're tapping on anxiety on different meridian endpoints, and the meridian endpoints are all tied in with different organs in the body. So how the process goes is we often start on the side of the hand, but you don't have to. We have what's called a setup statement. That's our focus. And then we tap on the different points and we cover all of them, and they're all tied in with different organs because we can hold emotions and past experience in different organs and or meridians. So what I just tell people that, once we start tapping, it's likely you can have some memories, but they may not. But oftentimes in my experience, people have. I just think of somebody I was working with recently, something totally unrelated. And this is before I shift over to the flight anxiety, totally unrelated issue, like a personal issue in her life, nothing to do with flying. And we're tapping along, and I said, what's coming to mind? And she had a memory of, camping when she was a little. She goes, well, I'm seeing myself camping as a little girl. And I said, okay, well, what happened? And it turns out that, she was camping with some girls and they all wanted to be in one tent and left her out. And she felt very unworthy and left out. And that ended up being a big story in her life where, there was lots of things of feeling like bullied and picked on and that sort of thing. And that was a huge pain piece. So that was interesting. It's like, okay, well, let's tap on that. So then we tapped on that. So that starts to clear what's going on underneath the surface and that what's causing the symptom today. Because, these symptoms don't just, show up necessarily. It's, as Eckhart Tolle refers to it, and Ben referred to it as the terrorist. Eckhart Tolle says, it's the pain body, which is past pain, emotional pain that's living in the body, that's residual, that's been unresolved from past experience we've had. And it will come up in order to stay alive when it's triggered to do so. So that could be for a lot of us going to get on a plane, right? Oh, okay, I'm in this position now. I haven't, what if I haven't cleared any of the claustrophobia for myself, right? And then I go to get on the plane again and I'm hoping I'm going to be okay. But my nervous system and body remembers that, right? So it's still there. So that's one of the things that we can do with tapping is we can start to clear all those layers, and people remember the stories that they have. Like, it's like, well, something happened. And, if people have been abused or, a lot of awful things happen, but, if somebody's being abused, we feel out of control, right? Were we abused? Were we told we had to stay there? Did our, like I had a, memory of my sister saying, Lara, hide and stay here. Don't move, and I'm like, what? Like, my little body remembering that. Why can't, what's going on? Maybe I'm hearing stuff going on around me. We don't think it's a big deal, but it is. So I don't know if that answers your question. There's so many different things, to explain it. So,
well, I was thinking to the sort of, the person who's never thought about it, literally in sort of very sort of granular speak. How does the tapping work? So when you're tapping, you're like literally tapping the body. Now I know this, but it's nice to hear it because I'm not trained in what you're trained in. So So how would you explain it to somebody who kind of goes, "Oh, I don't believe all that stuff." Does it matter?
A lot of people say that it doesn't matter. I think if they started doing it, then they would probably find that it would work, because the truth of the matter is that when you're tapping on different spots, on your body, you start to move the energy, and studies show that it lowers cortisol levels. And so I think if people do it once or twice and they go, yeah, that doesn't work for me, and they're not really into it, and maybe I think it's a decision, and you have to go, you know what, I want to work through this and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I think that that's a big piece first. I think I really, really believe that. And some people will say, yeah, I tried tapping. It didn't work for me. I did some YouTube videos, that kind of thing. Well, the YouTube video person who's making that video doesn't know what your specific issue is. And that's why it's great to work with somebody, because I was able to put myself in that position and say, I want to get out and I want to get off. And as I tapped on that, well, I wanted to get out and off of that Ferris wheel ASAP. And I wanted to get out of the womb right now. And I couldn't. And I felt trapped. And that's the thing, is that I remember. So if somebody's new to it and they've never heard about it, I would explain that we have an energy body. We store emotions. I would say everything is energy. Our thoughts are energy. our emotions are forms of energy, and we can store them in our body when they're unresolved, when we've had past experience, hurts and pains that we didn't resolve, and we can hold them there. And when you start to tap on different points and you talk and put words to exactly how you feel, you simultaneously release the energy that you're holding from that past experience. And that is why, last thing to say, that a lot of therapists now use tapping, because tapping and talking, they're getting so many better results, or so much better results than just talking. Talking, we're kind of, I did therapy for a long time too, and I think there's a place for it for sure. But it's we're keeping a momentum of a past experience going on. We're keeping it alive by talking about it. What's really cool about the tapping is I can say, all this anxiety, I just want to get out. I want to get out, see what else comes up. But I'm in a safe place and it's releasing while I'm talking. And they've done tests. They've not tests. They've done studies that prove this, So I always say to people, you can go to Dr. Peta Stapleton. She's in Australia. She's the one that started doing all the studies on it. Donna Eaton and her husband, David Feinstein. He's a scientist. She's the energy medicine lady. They're a married couple. He's done all the studies and a ton of studies with Peta Stapleton. And so those are great resources where people can go and look and just go, is this really something that's real? And, could it actually work before they work with a practitioner? Like, look into it. And I always say, see how it resonates with you. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But in a pinch, every time I've seen somebody say, I'm just going to the airport, my anxiety's through the roof, I'm freaking out, I have just lately just been saying, just tap on the side of your hand. You can tap on the side of your hand. This regulates emotions. I can tap right here. This is a kidney point, right? This is going to reduce fear. Now, it's not going to reduce it forever, but if I want to get on that plane and I want to just get through that flight, I can use it as a tool.
Interesting. Well, so, in full disclosure, we did used to have on the Flying Without Fear program, when I ran that, we'd have like a couple of hundred people in the room. There was, I think, at least two. There was one therapist who started, a woman called Jill, and she brought the tapping along. She was trained in thought field therapy, the Roger Callahan version, and the thing was, a lot of us, because but bear in mind, I'm surrounded by pilots and things like that. They're quite sort of in their heads. And they were like, what's all this? But for the people that it was helpful for, it was remarkable. So for some, if you take 100 people, I would say, at least half of them got something, even from that small intervention, where even if it's just enough to get them on the flight or to calm them. So I went from being quite a skeptic to kind of go, well, there might be something in this, but that's why I did a little bit of training, just to understand it so I could talk about it. But so I'm not closed to it at all. So if people are interested to find out, so that, because people listen to this, as all over the place, is there like a central place where they can, find a trusted human that's trained in this?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you can find people all over the world, and you can easily, look at that, and you can absolutely, you can Google that. I wouldn't say there's a central place. There's so many people that do tapping now. I don't, I know a lot of the names of a lot of the different schools. I don't, and then some of them probably have practitioners lists, I would say. And, I always think, I'm a trained practitioner in it, and I work with people on Zoom all over the place, or people in Vancouver come in. But I feel like it's important to look at some, look at, look at their testimonials, look at their reviews if they have them, see what they've, see what they've studied. And I think it's really important to do maybe even a consultation with people and just understand their process and see if you like them as a person and you like working with them, because I think that that's really important, and you'll get better results. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. So thank you for that.
And I would say the same thing for the emotion code as well. I know that Dr. Brad, they had it listed for a while. I think he still has it listed. I did it for a while, for, a couple of years, but, I've been doing the emotion code for a long time now. And I have regular clients who I work with. So you had to like pay to be on there as a practitioner. But yeah, like worked with people with all kinds of, stuff with the emotion code. So I don't,
So tell us about that, because I don't know anything about the emotion code. So, what in a nutshell, what's that, and how does it work? And if someone's listening, going, "Oh, I like the sound of the emotion code thing," what is it?
I'm laughing because you said nutshell. I'm like, yeah, I can be nutshell sometimes, but it's hard for me. I'm a teacher. I always joke with my students. I'm a teacher. I like to talk. I always have a lot to say. So yeah, this is the emotion code book, as I showed you. And so Dr. Bradley Nelson, yeah, this work is, he was working with people who, he's a holistic doctor in California, and he was working with people who were not like not healing. They were coming to him as an endpoint where they were really quite sick, and their doctors said, you got to get your affairs in order. And what he started to discover is that people, carry emotions in their body. So without getting into the whole story, because people can read their book if they, read his book if they want to. It's an excellent book. I love it. I've referred it to so many people. And he talks about trapped emotions in the body and how you can release them. And you can do that through muscle testing. And so when you muscle test, as he says, and this might be a little bit, out there for some people, but muscle testing is a portal way to the subconscious mind. And that's a quote, quote him, that's what he says. And when you muscle test, so what I do when I have somebody in here, again, it might sound funny, but, and I can do this with people, I do it with people who are on Zoom or we actually do those sessions on the phone, and they're 30 minutes, and you tune into them energetically, you ask their permission, and you muscle test and ask if you are, connected to them. And then you ask if they have a trapped emotion in their body, and you work off of this chart of 60 emotions. And when you find the trapped emotion, you find out what age it came up, and then you release it. So yeah, so they're balls of energy that sit in the body, and they distort the flow of energy in the body. And that's, they talk about that a lot in Chinese medicine. Dr. Brad talks about that as well. This book's been out for a really long time. And so, what was I going to, oh, I forgot. I lost my train of thought. It'll come back.
I was just talking about, like, I started with the in the nutshell thing, which you thought was amusing, but to sort of say, so if someone's listening. So you were talking about the 60 emotions, whether they be trapped, do it over the phone. So I think you probably answered it, but it was just, I was curious, like, how it actually worked, and I think I'm getting it now slowly. I don't know how it actually. I went to see somebody a few years ago. We did some muscle testing, did some resistance stuff with me, and I can't remember what he was trained in, which obviously was linked to this in some way. And I remember it being quite impressive, like that there were certain things I couldn't do, like I couldn't resist, or that, with certain like limbs and stuff, I couldn't move them in certain ways. And by the end of it, I was able to push against him in the ways I hadn't been able to before. It was the bizarrest thing, just after like a 40-minute session. So it made me think, okay, I'm trying to think what he's changing there. He came on the podcast and years ago, his name's Jeff Rolls, and he did this session. And I thought, oh, I've got to go and try it out, So
yeah, it might have been kinesiology.
That was it.
Oh.
Is that linked, or is that something completely different?
Well, here's the thing is, so kinesiology, so Dr. Brad does refer to it as kinesiology muscle testing, and that's generally when you test the strength and a weakness of a muscle that's tied in with a specific organ. So yeah, you probably did a base test, your arms out to the side. They could put your hand on your liver, for example, just on the right side of the body, and then they would test your arm, and they could test, and if it was weak, that might point to, your liver energy was a little bit low, or you could just say the organ itself, how it's functioning. So that's how that would work. So that's something that Dr. Brad did originally do, and that's what brought him to the emotion code. But what's happening in the case of the emotion code, and I'll just bring in Donna Eden, she says, everything is energy. This woman was born seeing the energy in the body, and she's amazing. If people are into energy, look up Donna Eden. She's amazing. And so she calls it energy testing. And so energy testing was something I learned a long time ago because I had digestive issues. And so I learned we called it muscle testing then, but it's not really a true muscle test. What the kinesiologist did with you sounds like it was a true muscle test. what's happening when we're testing food is we're testing, like I'm holding, a piece of bread in my hand and holding it up against my body. And I'm seeing if my body falls forward or back to find out if that is going to resonate with my body and if my body's going to break it down and use it for usable energy. But so I basically eliminated chocolate and cheese because I was getting intense migraines, for example. And I never got them again because I was able to test the food and I just eliminated those things. And now I was just having too much of them, but I have them in moderation now. So, but yeah, so when it comes to the emotion code, just a better example might be, I say to somebody, do you have a trapped emotion that causes you to, feel anxious on a flight? And I would muscle test and I would get a yes. I'd say, is it in column A or B? Is it in an odd or even row? Lots of times it would be, okay, it's anxiety. And I would say, well, how old were you when that anxiety came up? I muscle test, I get my answer. I know it sounds weird, but I'll tell you what happens after over 10 years of doing this. The same age keeps coming up. And it tells a story. And then people go, oh, you're bang on. And I'm like, it's not me. It's the muscle testing. I don't know what happened. But they go, well, I was 13 and I got trapped in such and such thing. And I remember that now. Or, my mom passed away. We moved. I changed my job. I got divorced. Like, I can't tell you. I mean, I have so many stories of all the people I've worked with over the years and so that's the thing with the that's what happens with the emotion code is the emotions tell a story. All this panic, all this shock, or it'll be under age 7 with people that I've worked with who have been abused, and they're like, and I'll just say to them, does that make sense? And they'll go, yeah, I know exactly what that was. And they don't need to talk about it. They don't need to tell the story. And that's one of the things I love about emotion code. It's very quick. And I release about 30 trapped emotions in a session, and you can have more of the same emotion, but once they're gone for good. And we use a magnet to release them. And a magnet is a pure, yeah.
So clever.
We run it over the governing meridian, which is one of only 2 meridians that run through the brain. And it runs like from around the lip through the brain, back of the body, and then up to the pelvic floor. But the governing meridian is the big, major meridian in Chinese medicine that connects with all the other meridians, organs, and tributaries. So I will test, okay, you've got anxiety. We release the anxiety. And then I test after, did we release that anxiety? Yes. Great. What's the next trapped emotion? And then we just go through and we release a bunch. People over time say that they feel lighter and less reactionary.
Wow, that's clever. So
yeah.
So I get the sense then that if somebody came to you with fear of flying, claustrophobia, whatever it is, that is entirely possible that they could shift that through the sort of work that you do.
100%. 100%. Absolutely. What I do with people is I teach them all my energy medicine techniques first. And there's about 15 of them that I learned from different people that I've studied with, but mostly with Donna Eden. And then there's another lady, actually, she's in the UK as well, that I studied with. And so those are all around calming the vagus nerve and the fight or flight response. If your vagus nerve is all lit up, that's when people have they faint, vasovagal response. It's what it is the triple warmer and vagus nerve through the side of the neck are not communicating. And they both run through the heart. So that can cause accelerated heart rate. Now we start to feel panic. And then we've got the thoughts that are feeding the emotions. And now there's this spiral going on and we're like, oh shit. And so I teach them, and they get a little booklet too of what the technique is, when it works, how to do it. So I give them, that's the first session, and I give them that. And then we do some emotion code. I teach them some transmutation practice, which is something that I learned from Eckhart Tolle about just when emotions come up, they really want to be released. So we work through that. I teach them that technique. And then we do tapping. And so I just have it like a 3-pack, but if people want to add on an extra one, they can. But I believe that if you commit and you really look at, okay, what happened in my past, what's causing me to feel claustrophobic, panicked, the fear of heights, like for me being on the Ferris wheel, fear of heights, for sure that came in from there as well, right? So I believe you can certainly shift a lot, and I've flown a few times since the last time that happened, and just keep working through more stuff, and haven't had a problem.
Yeah.
So yeah,
very cool. So if people are kind of tempted by this and they want to contact you, what's the best way to find you?
Well, I have a website, which is laracatherine.com.
Okay.
And it's Catherine with a C, Lara. And I have I do a consultation there, a 30-minute complimentary consultation. And so I just encourage people to book that with me first. Some people are like, no, I want to do that. And they book it. You know, a lot of my clients come from my yoga classes that I teach here in Vancouver. And, or I get a lot, you know, referrals after doing the work for a while. But if someone is new and they don't know me and they're not sure, as you said, like, how do you do, you know, what is tapping, right? Like it's better, it is helpful when I'm talking to somebody one-on-one with that, or I explain the emotion code.
Yeah.
And I explain the energy medicine as well. And so I just encourage people to book that 30-minute complimentary call if they want to learn more about my process, see if they like me, if they like what I say, all of that. I think that's really important when you're working with somebody, because there can be, and there often is, something deeper there that's going on, and it really doesn't go away. And if it's, you know, it can be sad. It can be things that we've totally forgotten about, and you want to be working with someone that you feel safe and comfortable with.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Well, I think that's true for any therapist. If you don't feel a some sort of safety or connection, then
Yeah.
find someone you do, because you know it's personal, isn't it? And it's revealing.
Mhm.
Okay, so I mean, this is very hopeful for people, you know, listen to this. And so, just to sort of by way of sort of a closure, uh, what would you say to people who are really struggling? You know, based on got a ton of experience and training, what sort of message of hope? I hope that's, well, that's a bit cheesy, sorry, but you know, what sort of positive ending, you can do it type thing could you say?
Well, I believe that you can do it, and I think that you have to I think that you have to want to, and I think you need to make a decision. You know, like Ben said yesterday on his, it was like he just decided, okay, I'm going to do this, you know, and he had his path and which way he was going to do it. And I think we all need to decide that I want to do this and that I want to overcome it, that I want to see the world, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And I think when you make that decision, you really do need to be open to all possibilities and what that might look like. And, you know, if you're working with someone like me, I'm talking about the energy body. I think if you ignore that, you're leaving a ton on the table. I really do. I think if we're not going to look at the past experience, the trauma, we have a nervous system. You know, it remembers, it knows what's happened, right? We have old thoughts. It's called conditioning. You know, we have beliefs, right? So, absolutely, you can look at each one of those. You can work through them all. You know, it might just be a little bit of stuff people have to do to feel safe and comfortable enough to get on a flight. There might be more work. It might be a work in progress for a little while. So, but I believe it's 100% possible. And, you know, that's why I've put my three things together, because the energy medicine ones they're just, you know, being English about it, even though I'm not, they're brilliant. You know, that they really are, to learn to calm your vagus nerve. I've taught those to so many, I've worked in, you know, not in corporate myself, but I've taught like stress, you know, reduction techniques for corporate here in Vancouver, and gone into offices or done it on Zoom. And I just do like two of my one, you know, top amazing technique, and people are like, ah. And it's like, yeah, because your vagus nerve and triple wormer are communicating now.
Yeah.
You know, it's important. It's really important. So yeah, you can do it, but you need to be open and willing and really, really want to, you know, and you know, that's what I would say. But I think we can release what we're holding in the body, and I think that I believe anyway. For I can only speak for myself. I think, you know, I'm meant to do that. I'm meant to do what I'm here to do and what I'm working through right now. And I think I was always going to come to the place where I was working, you know, going to work with people with
Yeah.
this. And you know, the oldest memory I have was, I remember being a little kid, and I'm like, and as I got older, it became a phrase, which was, I want to help people feel better than they already do. Whatever that takes, however that can look, I want to do it. And I know that I know how to help people calm down and relax. I'm really good at that. And it's just something I'm really informed on. I've obviously experienced it myself.
Yes.
And I have a ton of tools to, you know, to share with people. And so that goes back to your first question, like, why are we even talking, right? And, you know, I would say that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to share. And it's, it's a lot of people say, if you've got something to share that's a natural gift and you're not sharing it, then, you know, like, what are you doing, you know? And, you know, I'm in my 50s now, and I'm like, I want to make a difference.
Yeah.
You know, I really do want to make a difference. That's really that's important to me, and I have a lot to share, so I want to do it in any way I can.
Amazing. Brilliant, as we say in Britain, apparently.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware it was a British only thing, but so I'll say it more often now I'm aware of it.
That's because that's your country. Well, it's because all my cousins are from the UK, and I hear them say it every time I talk to them. So they're the only ones no one in Canada ever says that. So except my husband, who's a voice actor, and then he'll do a British accent, and then he'll chime in with that. But
Excellent.
yeah,
That's really good.
yeah.
Oh, Lara, thank you ever so much. That's just awesome. Really nice nuggets there. And I think for me, just hearing it, you seem like a normal, sensible person. Hearing you talk about things which for some people might be a bit of a leap, I think that's really helpful. And just how positive and definite you are about it, I think that's super helpful for people because some people are very lost and don't know what to do. And this could be the very thing. So thank you for coming on.
It's my pleasure. I'm really, really, really happy to be here. And I'd love to say again that, just remember you've got a nervous system, and it's remembering what's going on. And, there's some great books and so many wonderful options out there for us. But I think, we're leaving a lot on the table if we don't look at what the body remembers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
No, thank you.
Yeah.